Toby, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We were just saying with Owen, there's a real sense of from the players to put right the disappointment against Munster. It must have been, have harsh words been said in the last 2 weeks, or a lot of soul searching gone on?
No, not harsh words, just honest words, really. And it was quite an uncharacteristic performance, really, despite the mismatch in, availability a little bit. We're not necessarily pleased with what we could control. So, Munster were very good. You have to hold your hand up. They were boosted by a lot of returning players and played exceptionally well at home, as you'd expect. However, there were some parts of our performance that were uncharacteristic, and we've spoken very honestly about that. And if we put that right, then we'll put ourselves in a better position to be much more competitive. So that's what we're looking to do.
And that's right, isn't it? There's so much to play for this season. Never mind, of course, the big Saracens game coming up. But you've got realistic hopes of the playoffs, haven't you? Always,
yeah, for sure. There's you all know the distractions that are around at the moment and bits and pieces. And we said we would enjoy the Champions Cup, that we worked extremely hard the season before to get in, so let's maximise our opportunities there. And despite the no one giving us a chance in the group we were drawn in and bits and pieces, so that was obviously one thing. And we're in this to get as far down the track as we can and enjoy the journey, but understand that we want to be competitive and we want to get into the final knock-ins of all competitions if we can, because that's what we do it for. So without doubt, everything's important. Every game's important, and you're running out of games, so you've got to make sure that you perform well.
You mentioned those distractions. I'm sure we'll get to those in just a moment. But
I thought you might.
In terms of the injury situation, to update on progress of Derry Lake. You had hope for a return at the end of the Six Nations. Was a nasty medial ligament injury, didn't he?
He's still on course for that, which is good. He's good. Dan Lydiot's back. Sam Parry's back. Steve Myler obviously came back the week before with Owen Watkins. So we're getting a little bit back, which is nice. Which will obviously improve our competitiveness, in training and also, with what we can select. So that's certainly one of the most positive things for sure.
And obviously Gareth Anscombe's still a long-term layoff for him.
Yeah, again, he's making good progress. He's been on the pitch. He's been on the pitch this week for the first time. And Derry Lake has done a little bit on the pitch as well. So slowly. And as I've said repeatedly, the last few weeks are probably the most difficult on a long-term injury, are the most difficult ones, because it's how you react to the training's intensity and the volume and that balancing act. But we've got a good track record, and Simon Church and Chris Towers run good medical and physical programs that that accommodate for that. And normally when we get them back, they stay back, and that's the most important thing.
No formal agreement with the PRB still being signed, but Dwayne Peel did say this week that some of his players have been offered contracts. What is the situation with your out of contract players? Have any of them been offered anything? Yeah,
we've got some of those. We've obviously got a priority to some of that, having such a large number, and it's impossible to get, because some things lead to another. So there's only so much of the pie to go around, and you need to make sure that you spend it appropriately or portion it up appropriately. And so we've obviously got a priority around some of our young emerging players, for example, as you know, and some of those are with us, some of them not. Getting those things, and we've got a number of verbal offers out there and bits and pieces, subject to the agreements being signed off and the standardised contracts and those bits and pieces. And we've had some acceptance in some of those, which is great. So we've certainly made progress. We're in a better position this week than we were last week, but there's still plenty to get done.
Yeah, still lots of hard work ahead. But seeing a light at the end of the tunnel now must be a positive thing.
Yeah, I think for everyone knows where it is. It's a very difficult thing, and look, the long shot is, there's a significant percentage being taken off your budget, so the squad competitiveness or the ratio of depth to quality is always going to be the difficult thing to manage, and there's going to be some departures for sure. Some of them forced upon us, some of them by choice because it's taken too long. I've already lost one player, which I'm not going to name, which would have been nice to keep around, but they've got an option and they've gone elsewhere. So look, that's unfortunate. That's a casualty of this whole scenario.
Of course, in the long term, that would possibly mean that the regions would have to run with smaller squads next season. There's been talk of that. And just how challenging would that be, especially when you consider, on average, how many injuries you would pick up naturally in a campaign? Well,
I mean, the simple part is you budget. So there's injury audits, right? So everyone works on as an average injury. So the average injury audit's around 23% of your squad's injured at any one time. And so there's 23% gone. And then you look at, obviously, the uncontrollables, which is obviously Welsh call-ups, etc., which obviously we are significant at the moment. If you're working on a squad of 40, and we won't be at 40, we'll be less than that. So if you've got 23% gone plus another 14 on top of that, then that's the reality of where you are. So yeah, we're going to have to be very creative around even preparation, let alone the team. So yeah, it's going to be extremely challenging for sure. Because, as you say, the international call-up situation is particularly pertinent to the Ospreys because you provide the bulk of the Wales squad. Yeah, I mean that's now and that can, but the same problem for all regions, right? But yeah, it hurts us at the moment for sure. And you can become a victim of your own success, right? So that's a very, very difficult one. People will then probably come back about international overlap and structured seasons, but there's a lot of hidden cost in that. So you lose them for camps beforehand, and also when they come back, they've been in a very intense program elsewhere with learning different language and different styles of play and different bits and pieces. So there's almost an unlearning of one and a relearning of another. So that pays its way on your quality of performance. It's not to say you're not going to put them out. And the worrying thing for me, that's from my position, is from the playing position, is the quality of competitiveness that you can put out and the reliance on the same resource, which means from a player welfare point of view, you're effectively going to say, well, we need our players to be available for more. So that's the difficult part, for sure, balancing all of that. Just finally from me, speaking of Wales players, nice to have Kieran Williams and Rhys Davies back and what they bring to the table. It's great that Kieran gets back and gets some game time, and he's a guy who, obviously, everyone wants to play, right? So from that point of view, that's really important. And he's, obviously wants to play for Wales, but when he does, he wants to be able to play well. So it's important that he maintains a level of match fitness, and he's a very notable player for us. So I think that everyone benefits from that scenario. And Rhys Davies, we're delighted to obviously for him to get recognition and get his first cap. But again, when you're called upon, you want to be match fit and ready. So he's not featured in the plan so far. So it makes sense that those boys come back and get some work for us, and we can benefit, the individual can benefit, and Wales benefit if they get put back in.
So we can just ask you one quick one on Owen, who we've just been speaking to. Great to see him back after a little spell out. Can you just kind of sum up what he brings, I guess, both on and off the field, because he was talking to us about how he's interested in the analysis and trying to help out on that front while he was off.
Yeah, so we run, it's not unique to us. We try and, at least if you're physically enabled, keep the players, and not just him, so we do it with, Gareth. We've done it with Gareth Anston, Will Griff, Dan Lydiate, for example, Dowie Lake, all those long-term injured boys, to keep them mentally stimulated. And obviously one of the repercussions of being efficient with training clips and bits and pieces, sometimes you lose out on people becoming students of the game a little bit. So there's a double attitude. A, it keeps them mentally stimulated. B, it sort of grows their knowledge a little bit. and they feel part of the group and they can contribute. So there's lots of wins in that respect, and we carry that out with a number of players, and it's not just because it's keeping them busy. It's actually meaningful stuff, and the fact that they feel they can still contribute even if they can't do their talking on the pitch. So yeah, that's the sort of plan behind it. And Owen's role in our team, he's a defensive leader. He's a very good defender, and he's passionate about that. So he's taken quite a lot of ownership around scrum defence, for example, and backs defence. So yeah, the more added value you can give, not just on your performance but around your teammates, and the leadership side. Every coach will tell you want more leadership, or as much leadership as you can get, and you need to grow that. And I spend quite a lot of time with those guys in the leadership space to try and expand their skill set in that area as well. So yeah, there's lots of layers to it, but yeah, he's a significant player for us on and off the pitch.
So he fits into that student of the game category then?
Well, he's trying to grow that, and I think that the game is set up the way everyone talks about coaching efficiency and playing efficiency, and we'll send you clips. There's often context to a lot of things, and in the moment you need to understand the context as well as the situation. So I think that growing people's understanding gives you better context to make good decisions.
Lastly for me, you said in particular there's one player you were keen to retain who's decided to go elsewhere. Are you hopeful, confident in regard to retaining the others that you'd like to keep with the Ospreys?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can just about fit it in, but we'll end up with a squad number around 36.
36?
36. Gosh. If we're going to make those, I'd like, we can have up to 44, because I'd like 44 for the depth issue. But we're looking at 36, 38 maximum, I think. I can't see us being able to afford any more than that. And the numbers that we've just talked about, it might be different to that, but that's the sort of area that we're at. And I think all regions are around that from a maximum point of view. Irrespective of what, I can't see how the numbers fit otherwise. And you're going to have a massive reliance on that next group of academy players for sure, which in some cases can pose greater problems because you may be putting people in that aren't quite ready. But the flip side of that is the ones that are ready will get game time. So
yeah. I asked Dwayne this week. He said about 38 to 40 for Scarlett. So you're looking 36 to 38, aren't you?
Yeah, that's
as you say. Your kids then, you're not kids, are they? Your top ranked academy players are going to have a key role.
And bearing in mind, that's if people agree to the offers that they've been given.
Yeah.
There's still, that's what everyone thinks, let's get contracting. It's not as simple as that. There's still a negotiation involved here.
Well, I guess that's why I asked how confident you were of them agreeing to
look, we've got numbers. Despite what has publicly been put out there, we've had these conversations going on for quite a long time.
Yeah.
In relation to people were very clear of where they sit in the whole spectrum. I've communicated to them, from December onwards really, around this is the situation, and if it doesn't change, this is what it looks like. And now we're obviously trying to finish those, dot the I's, cross the T's, and some are in that no man's land. Well, if we get this amount of money, it will mean this, and if we don't, then it won't mean that. So that sort of ambiguity is very, very difficult for people to live in. But we've done our best to try and be honest and upfront about all of those situations.
Well, good luck with that, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Toby, I don't know if you saw David Moffat's quotes this week.
No.
He basically suggested, he's former WRU chief executive.
I know who he is.
He basically suggested that the number of regions be slimmed down to 3.
Sure.
And he said the region that should be cut should be the Ospreys because they don't own their ground. As head coach, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, people are entitled to their opinion. The region that has produced more international players in the last 2 years, the only one in the Champions Cup, I'm probably going to not agree with that. So I think whatever happens, we need a competitive regions and competitive Wales. So I think that everyone would agree with that, because people follow success, and what these challenging times are going to get, what that looks like, and the expectation around that. Everyone's going to have to understand that, whether that's one region, let alone 4, 2 regions, 3 regions, 4 regions, 5, doesn't matter. We have to understand what expectation is. However, look, people are entitled to their opinion. The money is the money. Whether there's people are looking into where more money can be got from, because if you can do that and you can increase your squad competitiveness, you can have a less reliance on all the players, which means that the likelihood is you can be very competitive. So, and I think we've shown that. So, look, people are entitled to their opinion. It could be, as much of a, last in, first out scenario. I'm sure people will always make their case, but we're all trying to make this work in whatever guise and the hand we're being dealt.
How do you find all this speculation, about whether or not regions should be cut and whether or not it's the Ospreys or not? How do you find it?
I think that we have to be. I find it distracting, obviously, if not careful. But fortunately, I'm a little bit older than most, so I've seen quite a lot of this sort of distraction stuff. Not quite to this degree, I hasten to add, and it's quite as vociferous as this. There's distractions going on in the English Premiership with 2 clubs, going into liquidation. So look, these things are always around, and there's always a solution in there somewhere. I find the most frustrating point is there doesn't seem to be, and there are a lot more of it than there has been, an alignment to understand that we all want the same things, but it's very, very difficult when you're actually in it and right at the coalface. So I think that's tough. That collaboration bit is very, very tough. And now that the players are, at the centre of that, which they always have been, but now the visibility of what the reality is, it's been an explosion. And to be fair, I think that it has to happen, because we've got to find a way to plot forward. So my biggest frustration probably is that this has been going on for, I know it's just come out in the last few weeks, but this situation's been, well, some would argue 10 years in the making, but it's certainly been around in my tenure for sure.
Are you pretty optimistic about the Ospreys' future?
Yeah, I am, yeah. Absolutely I am. Until I know otherwise. I've had great conversations with the Y11 owners, for example. They're committed to us and the Ospreys, and until that I hear differently, we'll continue to do what we need to do.
Yeah. And looking at you mentioned young players there, and said you're sort of keen to sort of retain those guys. Joe Hawkins, there's speculation about him a couple of weeks ago, which proved unfounded, linked with Exeter. Mm-hmm. But I'd imagine, given its efforts in the Six Nations and for the Ospreys, that he'd be high on your list.
Of course
of
he is.
Guys you want to retain.
100%. And you look at that demographic of those sort of players, your Dowie Lakes, your Jack Morgans, people like that, and even the ones that aren't quite there. So Rhys Davies, who's in contract, Will Griff. You've often asked me about a lot of these players. I know you have an interest in that sort of player. Kieran Williams, Keelan Giles. We've got to prepare for the now and the future, and to making sure you keep your prestigious talent that has lots of growth and improvement will be the way that the Ospreys can maintain its competitiveness, and that's a sensible thing to do.
And Joe's done well, hasn't he, in the Six Nations for a 20-year-old lad?
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
And have you been surprised by how well he's adapted to Test rugby?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. Joe's always had the right temperament. I think that's the best thing I can say about him. He's always had the right temperament, and it's all about finding, the fit. There's still, like every young player, rough edges that he'll continue to work at and knock off. But he's had good visibility, and at the highest level, and that's the sign of a good player, right?
Yeah, for sure. With Gareth Anscombe, have you got a return date for him, or a rough for a tune then? What
Around about, we're hoping that around Dragon Saracens that he can play a part around that.
Right, that's ahead of schedule in some eyes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so him and Dowie Lake are both ahead of schedule.
And just wrap it up really. What are you expecting from Benetton this week?
Well, obviously everyone. Well, look at what they contribute to their national team. They can contribute a hell of a lot. They play, they are where they are in the table, by no fluke, I hasten to add. They play a very expressive game, a bit like Italy's national team, obviously, and them and Zebra, to be honest. Italian rugby's changed a lot. A lot in the time that I've been there, and their attitude towards it. So they're very much an expressive team that like to play and move the ball. And if you don't defend well and control your set piece, and more importantly control their set piece, you're going to aim for certainly a fatiguing afternoon, let alone a busy one. So we need to do basically what we didn't do against Munster as a minimum, because if we can do that, then we'll get a foothold in the game.
Toby, you said around 36, maybe up to 38 next season. Just for comparison, what are you running on at the moment?
It's difficult because they're asking you to separate out between play like a senior squad and a academy group, whereas I always train both together. And the reason I train them both together is because for benchmarking, if you believe in developing young players, benchmarking people continually is really important. They still have to be first team ready because you've got to keep a standard of training. So, look, in real terms, we'll definitely be, what would we be? Early 50s? I mean, Leinster have used 60 players, to give you a comparison.
So if it's early 50s, including top-end academy players, perhaps is the way to describe it.
Yeah, probably, if you aim for around 50, I think
Around
that's probably
50.
probably accurate.